we've got to talk about Pharah. Now, if you played any ranked recently, you may have realized that Pharah is kind of good right now. In fact, Alec Dawson confirmed that her unmirrored win rate is 58% right now, which is much higher than what they typically want. I think they try to keep it within the 5% of 50, so 45 to 55% range. That's kind of where they're aiming. Pharah is way above that, and in fact, I think as we keep going in this meta, I only see her continuing to grow. Now you're going to be watching some old footage from the beginning of season 9. That's why I've already died twice. But I wanted to talk about Pharah. I wanted to talk about why she is so good, why she just so randomly has popped into the meta, and has become so dominant in ranked and in competitive play. Because this is both, like in team environments and on ladder, Pharah is very good right now. So let's talk about what has made Pharah so good. Excuse me. I think the biggest thing is that, Pharah has always, pre-rework, had lots and lots of airtime, which would cause her to just stay super far away in the back, flying around cover, and basically not engage. And the rework kind of aimed to bring that airtime way further in, like much more condensed, and have her be more horizontal rather than vertical. However, that isn't really the case. In fact, she actually still has a crazy amount of airtime if you play your fuel right and you play the high grounds correctly, especially with that overcharge she gets on the jump jets, when she gets like 50% extra resource. Mix that with her rocket boosting, she can stay in the skybox and stay in super safe controlling positions for a very long time. And she gets to do a lot of damage with her rockets with no fall off, so she really does not have to engage at all. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, old Pharah could do the same thing, and she wasn't very good. But the thing about old Pharah is that she didn't have as much consistent mobility and specifically like changing angles. Like, she didn't have the ability to change angles very quickly. Concussive Blast is on a much shorter cooldown, and crucially here about Concussive Blast, it now does a lot of damage, and in fact, basically ignores her breakpoints. If you're able to hit 2 of these rockets that are much bigger now, by the way, after the size changes, if you're able to hit 2 of them, then you are guaranteed a kill if you're able to hit the blast radius or just any part of the concussive blast, because it does 30 damage in an AoE. And it doesn't matter where you are, it will always do 30 damage, right? So that means Pharah's breakpoints are better, and she's much better at hitting people, right? She's much more consistent at it. Concussive Blast is up more often than it used to, so she's able to get and secure those kills very well. And of course, like, also, they do damage on impact as well, so you can get like insane amounts of damage to the enemy team if you are good enough. And in fact, you really don't have to be that good to hit these seemingly gigantic rockets, right? Also here, the Pharah benefits a lot from the armor changes, because she does, big burst damage that, instead of how it used to against armor, it used to just be minus 30%, but since she does like 120 damage per rocket, she's effectively ignoring armor just based on how it works. So that is really good for Pharah to chunk down tanks from super far ranges, because you have to remember, there are really not that many tanks that deal with Pharah very well. D.Va is decent at it. She can eat the rockets pretty well. But if Pharah is playing so far away, there's only so much the D.Va can do to actually pressure her. Mauga is okay at it, because he's got those hit scan bullets, and putting somebody on fire is just guaranteed damage. But again, if Pharah is playing at the right range, then it really is no trouble. And she can chunk the Mauga down very, very well because he has no way to mitigate that damage, too. So his armor really doesn't matter against her either. And playing at those ranges basically makes Pharah a pseudo-sniper, and a pseudo-sniper with higher fire rate, better mobility, better utility, and at some point it's just like, why even play a sniper or anybody when you could just play a Pharah instead, right? Especially on some of those maps where Pharah really shouldn't be that good, hit scans should dominate, like Circuit Royale. There are strategies that make Pharah viable, and in fact maybe the best pick, mixed with certain heroes, and it's kind of concerning when Pharah can get away on maps where she isn't particularly very strong, because Pharah is one of those characters that has like one kind of gimmick, which is the flight, and if she's able to get around that on the maps that she's not very good on, that really speaks volumes to her strength, right? We already talked about on ladder, she shoots 2 shots with the concussive as well. One of her better counters is Tracer, who she can actually 2-tap very, very consistently. In fact, she could do it with the concussive blast, which is really important because the concussive blast comes out regardless of how you fired the rocket, so you can basically blow her up instantly if you're good enough. And that's really tough because, you know, Tracer, especially since Pharah has to play so far away, Tracer is going to struggle to get in that deep, and by the time she gets there, Pharah is going to have much better advantage because she hasn't had to use any of her horizontal cooldowns to get away from her. So that's really bad, at least for Tracer. In terms of the hit scans, yes, Cass is really good right now, and he's going to be able to control your distance, but he's not a long-range pick. And in fact, even Ashe doesn't really have that range either to deal with the ranges that Pharah is going to be playing at because of the hit scan damage drop-off being so heavy on this. So hit scans don't really counter Pharah. In fact, you know, that's kind of like, yes, hit scans counter Pharah, but that's kind of been like the scrub way to be like, oh, but they have a Pharah, I don't know how to play against her. Let me just swap to a hit scan, and then when it doesn't work, you're like, why doesn't it work? It's because the Pharah is still playing around the hit scan. Like, there's counterplay that Pharah has to hit scans. It's not just like an instant win kind of thing. And since that damage reduction is so severe, Pharah, again, has a lot of counterplay to those really strong hit scans at the time. Again, just play far away. I don't know if... I feel like a broken record. I'm just saying Pharah just needs to play super far away, but that really is the case, right? That's not what the rework was aiming for, but in practice, that's the best way to get value out of Pharah. Just stay super far back, use your abilities that have insane range, no damage drop-off whatsoever. Also, just on top of that, the heroes that are meta right now, she has a couple good support picks that go really well with her on ladder. Obviously, I think Mercy is just better because Pharah is good, especially on ladder. It's really hard to deal with Pharah Mercy. But Suzu, Life Grip, Nano, they all make Barrage safe, especially if you have multiple of those characters, right? If you have 2 or 3 of those characters, any Barrage you do is going to be completely safe, right? If you have a Diva on your team, obviously she's going to eat all that, right? Like, not only are they safe, I mean, like, Nano increases the power of it, which is really good. Suzu just makes you invulnerable, obviously. Life Grip will pull you while you're barraging, so you could, like, even travel with it and come back to safety and come back to your, like, effective range better. It's really, really tough to deal with, and it makes Barrage, which is one of those risky ults, really not that risky anymore, and it's just this big damage potential to trade, like, oh, I got 1 or 2, that's all I needed. And now I'm back to my old game plan. I just guaranteed my team a kill, right? So that's part of the reason why Pharah has become so good, right? It's just this big, like, after Season 9 and after the armor changes and all of that, Pharah has just really, really come into her own, and I think professional players have really figured out that, you know, I think we've been trying to play Pharah like this kind of, this dive character, super in and out, but that's just really not how she plays. I mean, it's just not very effective. She is going to get caught out by all the other characters. She just doesn't win duels like that. So people just realize it's like, we can kind of still play Pharah like old Pharah, except now she has better damage pressure and better mobility. So that's kind of why Pharah has started making her way and just becoming such a dominant force. And again, she's a pretty easy character. Like really, if you understand how to play cover and you don't really have to aim your rockets very well, and you understand that if you see somebody in the wrong spot and you just concuss them, that's it, right? You just play a little more conservatively. Don't play super duper unsafe. You have definite moments where you can, but she's pretty easy. I'm not gonna lie, I was on a bit of slump on DPS. I kind of dropped into like Diamond 3. I've just been playing Pharah for like the last 2 days, and I'm already back up to Diamond 1 on like a, I don't know, like 70% win streak. I mean, probably even higher, to be honest. So this character kind of plays herself, I'm not gonna lie. So basically, how do we prevent this, right? Like, what would be a good way for Pharah to, what's it called? To be nerfed, right? How do we get Pharah closer to the playstyle that we thought that she was going to have? And honestly, she probably should have, right? So I think the best thing to do is to remove, or at least like lower the vertical distance that her passive flight gets. So like when you hold spacebar and you start flying, I think we should drastically reduce the vertical distance so she can't fly as high, right? I would even say maybe we remove it in general, because the reason why Pharah is able to stay in the sky so well is because she can just hover and just kind of stay in the one spot, right? She can just like tap, 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 and she'll stay in a very good spot for her, right? If we removed any kind of vertical component of it, she would get up there and she would only be able to stay at that height until she has stopped using boosters. So basically, she'll go up there, hold boosters, be up there, and she'll run out of resource and she'll fall to the ground. Or she'll go up there and tap the boosters and start going like this, right? I believe that's much healthier, and that's going to disincentivize that playstyle of just stay up in the skybox and never do anything, and maybe even like surf on a roof until you get your jump jets back and you get more fuel, right? That's really, I think, a problem. I think to compensate, and again, to get her closer to that playstyle that we want her to be, like that in and out, much more horizontal movement, I think you can buff the speed of the jump jets. You could even give her a little more resource. I don't think that's also a bad idea. But basically just make it so that Pharah cannot stay in the sky. And in fact, if there was no vertical component to the boosters, she would actually have to trade her health or her abilities to get into the sky, right? Because right now she can just get into the sky, whatever, no problem. But if you wanted to get high, right, like if you wanted to just get up a little better, that would force you to rocket jump. And then you get yourself up higher than normal, and then you could stay there. Or it would force you to use your jump jets, and then you have like a cooldown gone, right? If you want to get vertical, there is some trade-off, right? You don't just get to fly in the sky for free. You either have to use an ability or use some of your health or ammo to get there as well. I think that is going to make Pharah have a lot more decision-making. It's going to make her a lot more interesting, and it's going to make her a lot more fun. That's kind of like the big change I would like to see. Now, also, I think that her jump jets are the things that give her overdrive for her boosters. I don't want to completely remove that because I think that's a fun mechanic, and it lets her keep playing. It keeps her uptime up, which I think is really good. But if that happened instead of on the jump jets and happened on the jet dash, again, combined with this like faster Pharah, faster horizontal Pharah, that is, I feel like that would play a lot more fun. It would be a lot more incentivizing Pharah getting in and being aggressive, and disincentivize, again, just jumping up in the sky. Now I have extra fuel so I can stay in the sky longer. It's more of like, now I have extra fuel to skate around, right? And do any of that fun stuff on Pharah instead of just this lame sit back and spam kind of play style. Also, I do think the concussive mine, I like the fact that it does damage, but I definitely think the splash damage of it should scale with the center. Like, the further out you go, it should do less damage. I think at most The problem is that 30 damage is a lot, and Pharah rockets already do direct hits. They do 120. So even bringing the concussive mine down to 10 at the outer edge is still basic. I just muted my mic in accident. Is still basically guaranteeing you a kill. So either I think that splash damage needs to go down significantly, or it needs to go from 30 in the mid, or like maybe even like 10 in the middle to 0 at the edge, something like that. Bring that damage down all the way. Alternatively, or in addition, maybe just bring the rocket damage down to 120 damage for these gigantic rockets is just a little bit much. I mean, you could also just bring her rocket size down a little bit, but I do think her DPS output is just kind of insane. This would also help against tanks because, again, Pharah just basically doesn't interact with tanks right now, and I think that's a problem. Because no tanks can really interact with her, and she just kind of is very, very effective against them. So I would definitely take her DPS down in some form or fashion. I wouldn't touch the cooldown on Concussive Blast. I feel like that's the fun part of her kit. Again, it's like you have to make a decision about the damage or mobility. I think for the majority of the time right now, you have to take it for the damage. So that's why I say if you get rid of some of the damage, you'll be more incentivized to use it for mobility. Mix it with the other changes. Again, more horizontal Pharah, better for the game, in my opinion. You could, again, I talked about making the rocket smaller. Also, you know, Pharah, again, does a lot of damage specifically against armor. I don't know how this would exactly work, but any kind of way that would make rockets a series of explosions when they hit the ground. So basically, it takes the one big burst of, like, one instance of damage and spreads that burst across many instances of damage, basically so that it still procs the armor. Because that would help a lot, I think. The armor damage is pretty insane. And if you were to just somehow make rockets proc the armor and basically reduce their damage by half. I mean, that's what's called like it is. It would literally reduce their damage by half if they were able to proc actual armor. Instead of just the -5. If it's minus 50%, that's a crazy reduction. I think that could go a long way of making Pharah less frustrating to play against as tank. Because again, there are very few counter plays you can make against Pharah other than completely ignoring her LOS, which is very, very difficult to do. So that's kind of like I don't know how that would feel. I don't know how they would implement that kind of solution, but something that I kind of thought might be a good, healthy middle ground for tanks. If they didn't want to reduce their total damage, you could still make it easier for tanks. But basically, that's it. I filmed this. I thought maybe a patch would come out, but it turns out there was no patch today. At least, I don't think there is. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I wanted to talk about Pharah because we might still have this Pharah for another week or two before the mid-season patch. And again, she is very, very good right now. I want to know what you guys think. Do you think Pharah is a ranked menace? Do you think she's overblown right now? Maybe you didn't think Pharah was good in the first place. Please let me know in the comments below. Also, do any of the other good YouTube stuff while you're at it. Subscribe, like, whatever it is. I do these live on twitch.tv/LaneHemingway. That's Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I like to try and do discussion every single time I go live. Just so there's always something for me to talk about. Also, if you have any rework ideas, hot takes, anything like that relating to Overwatch, join my Discord. It is down in the description below with the rest of my socials. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good day.